Good evening, everyone. I believe we are now live on home TV and ready to move forward with our virtual meeting. First, I want to mention this is a virtual meeting of the Meridian Township Board. We're virtual because state law allows it where there's emergency order in place, and there is emergency order in place both in Ingham County and in Meridian Township. So we're going forward with this as a virtual meeting. The notices were done in accordance with the law. And we will start with Pledge of Allegiance, and then when I call the roll, or rather when the clerk calls the roll, please announce pursuant to the new law where you are seated if you are a board member. In other words, are you in Meridian Township or some other location? All right, do the Pledge of Allegiance first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now I'll call on Ms. Guthrie to call the roll, and please, as I said, announce where you're from. I'm, by the way, here in Meridian Township.
All right, so I'm going to mark that down as you're here in Meridian Township then, Supervisor Stika.
Very good.
Right. Clerk Guthrie is here in Meridian Township. Treasurer DeShane.
Here, Meridian Township as well.
Trustee Jackson. I don't see her on my screen. I don't know if anyone else.
I haven't seen her on my screen yet either. No.
Okay. All right. Trustee Opsimer.
Attending from the city of Lansing.
Okay. Trustee Sumlin is not here this evening as well. And Trustee Wazinski.
Present, and I'm in Meridian Township.
Okay, great. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 board members here.
Very good. We will start out today with a presentation by Gavin Allman on the new firefighter. Well, he is the new firefighter paramedic. So the presentation will actually be by Mike Hamill, our fire chief of our firefighter Allman.
Thank you, Supervisor Stika, board. Yeah, I'm just happy to let you have the privilege to see our new firefighter, Gavin Allman. He comes to us from Battle Creek. Just a good catch for us, great guy, very motivated and happy to be here. Got his training from Kellogg Community College and worked for another fire department and has a little bit of experience. He comes to us with just a great devotion. He's ready to go, and we're just so happy to have him. He's got 2 shifts under his belt now and just fitting right in. So I'm going to turn it over to Gavin, and I think he's on the bottom of my screen anyway. Gavin, if you want to go ahead and let everybody know who you are and welcome aboard.
Thank you, Chief Hamill. My name is Gavin Ullman. I am very grateful to be here. As much as Chief Hamill said I was a catch for you guys have been a fantastic catch for me. It's been a perfect fit, and I'm super grateful for the opportunity to work here.
Well, welcome. We're very proud to have you here. Looking forward to having you do good things for the township. People in Meridian very much appreciate those who serve us and put their lives at risk in doing so. And you have now joined that awesome group, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else want to have any conversation with Mr. Allman? No? Okay. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Allman. All right. We will now move on to citizens addressing agenda and non-agenda items. And I will mention that the first citizen I'd like to have called on will be Alex Brace, because I will allow him more than 3 minutes because of the nature of his presentation. But otherwise, citizens are limited to 3 minutes. And we will start with Mr. Brace, if that's okay with Mr. Geeves, who's in charge of running this show here.
It's your meeting, sir, and we'll start wherever you would like to, sir.
Mr. Brace.
All right, well, thank you so much. Like was said, my name is Alex Brace. I am the executive director of the Small Talk Children's Advocacy Center. We're a nonprofit in Lansing that serves children in Ingham and Eaton counties who are victims of sexual and physical abuse. So our agency has been around for about 10 years. And we've served thousands of children in that time span, and we're continuing to grow and adapt, especially, during these really difficult times. We know that, unfortunately, the environment of the pandemic is sort of a perfect recipe for more abuse to be happening. So being able to bring awareness to the work that we do is more critical than ever. So I really want to, first thank, everybody in Meridian Township and, especially Clerk Guthrie, who has been a great supporter and advocate for us for a very long time. We have been celebrating all month Child Abuse Prevention Month. So one of the things that we've been doing is this pretty large scale pinwheel planting campaign. It's something that we've done on a smaller scale over the last few years. But this year we've really kind of gone for it and built it up to be something that's been really, really successful. And, I really want to thank especially everybody in Meridian Township for that. I think, as far as all the partners we've had, Meridian Township has jumped on this, very, very vehemently. And we are so excited about the partnership that we built with them. But because of the nature of our work, we work really closely with the Meridian Township Police, Children's Protective Services, the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office, we worked with Home TV in the past as well. They've covered a lot of our events and, been really supportive of us in getting the word out to the community. But this year we've really built our relationship with the Parks Department there. And we have been able to, we've planted, last week we went out to the farmer's market, we met some volunteers there. And we planted one really large, the biggest one we've ever done by far, a pinwheel garden at the corner of Marsh and Central Park Drive, right where the solar array is. So if you drive by there, you'll see our pinwheels. Hopefully they, withstood the rain that came later that afternoon. But we also put some yard signs there as well, just to bring attention to Child Abuse Prevention Month, help people understand why this is such a significant concern. Not only in our community, but across the country as well. I think people don't really, because it's a taboo topic, they don't want to talk about it. They don't really understand the severity of it. We know that 1 in 6 boys and 1 in 4 girls will be abused before they turn the age of 18. We think about all the children in our community in Meridian Township, that's a significant number of people. And, we, at the end of the day, we want to run ourselves out of business. We want to be able to say that we've, fixed this problem and close our doors and then send all of our staff, back out on the job market because the job is done. And that's our goal at the end of the day. And being able to do awareness campaigns like this and partner with Meridian Township to be able to do this is really, really critical in that. So I just want to thank all of you for that opportunity. Also, just let everybody know we're going to be at the farmer's market. We'll have a table there this Saturday. So if you happen to be there, I'd love to, just come and thank you and tell you anything more about Small Talk that you'd love to know, because that's something I'm definitely very passionate about and think it's really important for people to know what's going on. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to address, your trustees and thank you.
You're welcome. We'll continue on now with our public comment section. You have 3 minutes to speak. We ask you to be respectful, hopefully to stick to the topics that we have today, although you're free to speak on others if you need to. And we will ask Mr. Geeves if there's anyone who's put their hands up or wanting to come forward.
And I will remind that for the people watching from Home TV Channel 21 Comcast, they can dial in 517-349-1232 to make public comment. But of course, anyone in the attendee area is welcome to use the raise hand feature, and we will call on you in there. We have one person in there currently identified as John Feischney. And if he can begin by stating his name and address for the record, we'd appreciate that.
Please proceed.
Yes, thank you. John Faithny, appreciate being able to address the board. My wife and I own a home on 3566 Kansas Road. And the reason I'm here is because of the proposal, which was made to rezone property on Kansas Road and as well on Jolly Road, essentially changing the residential nature of Kansas Road into a professional office complex road. Such activity proposal, which was made in good faith by Martin, et cetera, was reviewed by the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission unanimously defeated the proposal as Martin had made it. There are 18 members that I'm aware of in the community who oppose this rezoning. And I just like to reinforce, I've communicated to several of you before and appreciate your graciousness. I'd like to reinforce the importance in supporting the neighborhood of Kansas Road rather than letting it go down into a different format, which would be non-residential. Obviously, we realize that development will occur on Kansas Road, but we would prefer that it be residential, and we feel that that would be consistent with the master plan of Meridian Township.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to speak? 3 minutes.
I
Anyone?
see no other hands, sir, and I'm hearing no telephone calls.
Okay, thank you. We will now go on to the Township Manager's Report. Manager Walsh.
Good evening, Supervisor Stika and members of the board. I want to update you on a few things this evening, and then if you have any questions. The first thing is an update on how the township is handling the continued challenges that we have with COVID. It's been, as in most places, it certainly has been in our buildings, and we're doing our best to really balance the safety of our team and the safety of people coming into the building, and still providing the basic level of services that we need to provide to the public. And I'm pleased with where we're at on it. We'll continue to weigh this out as we go. We closed early on Friday. We reopened on Monday after a deep cleaning over the weekend, and we'll continue to balance that out of protecting everyone, but yet providing a basic level of service. As you know, our community development director, planning and development, and whatever the title is here in Meridian Township, Mark Kieselbach is retiring, and we should rearrange those names to match every other community in the state. But we are currently looking for a new director. It's been an exhaustive search. The deadline is Friday. I know that Director Tehoff and Manager Perry and I have been spending a lot of time on finding what we hope is the right replacement. We'll be conducting, we may have 1 or 2 candidates only, and we'll be interviewing those candidates next week. I have invited the chair of the Planning Commission, Scott Hendrickson, and another planning commissioner. I want them to be, they're going to be closest with the new director, and I want them to have a comfort level. So I've had a couple of really good conversations with Chair Hendrickson, and he's invited member Mark Bloomer to also sit on the interview. So those 2 planning commission members, along with 2 staff people within the department and our director of HR, those 5 will actually interview 1 or 2 candidates next week. We are doing a very comprehensive review and comprehensive search. You may also recall that we're working through an arrest that occurred on March 10th, which started out as retail fraud and then escalated from there. And we've been working, we came forward on March 11th or 12th, right after it occurred, and said we're going to do an internal review. We're going to have it reviewed by the state police. We've also engaged the expertise of a retired state police internal affairs commander, Tawana Powell, to come in and also review what occurred on March 10th. We want to make sure that we're open and transparent about what happened. And as we said, as soon as it happened, we notified the community, we notified the press that as soon as it was over, we would provide all the video, all the body cam, and everything that goes along with that, plus the review of the state police, a review of the county prosecutor, and a review of an external expert in excessive force. All that is coming forward and should be available in the next 7 to 10 days. We're working on broadband as a township, but also with the county. Our efforts continue. We're in discussions. Mr. Perry is handling that for the township with a committee. And we're committed to move forward on that as one of our goals for the township and taking a lead, not only in the township, but throughout the county. We appreciate the assistance that we've received so far from County Controller Greg Todd. As you may recall, yesterday I provided you a budget document for the first quarter of the year, January through March. One of the questions that came up from a board member with a very keen eye was the receipts for the revenue receipts for the fire department for ambulance transport. We typically bring in about $1.3 million per year, and how could it be at $250 after the first quarter? That doesn't bode well for revenue for the year. After some research today with Chief Hamill, we found out that there's one payment that did not get remitted or received in late March, which should have been counted towards that time. So actually our revenue for the first quarter for ambulance revenue transport is $343,000, not $240,000. So you take that out and extrapolate that out over the year, looks like we'll be beyond our 1.3 million. Was mentioned earlier by a citizen, the Jolly Road rezoning. You can expect to see that on May 6th. The requesting party has asked that be put off so there could be some more research into that, but expect it to be at your May 6th. That's a Thursday night. It's that because of the school election on the 4th. That should be the first time you see that recommendation from the Planning Commission. You also received an update on our building permit review, the first quarter of the year. As you know, we had $13 million in new investment in 2020 for the first 3 months of the year. And the first 3 months of 2021 have brought in 11 million. So we're slightly under where we were last year at this time. The Brownfield Redevelopment Authority meets on April 24th. We'll be hopefully issuing our first reimbursement through the Brownfield to the developers of the Okemos Village project. And finally, in discussions with the supervisor, we're moving forward with the purchase of an ATV for the fire department that Chief Hamill's recommended. It's not in the budget. It's about a $20,000 expenditure. I think you've all been notified about that, but I wanted to bring it up this evening. You know, we've had a number of grass fires this year, and we're relying on outside agencies to help us with that. And we need to take more of a lead when it comes to that. The ATV holds about 70 gallons of water, and also will be available for medical response on all of our trails and land preserves as well. So that concludes my report. I appreciate your attention, and I'm here if you have any questions, Mr. Supervisor.
Very good report. Thank you very much. Board members, by the way, Ms. Jackson joined us quite a while ago near the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone who has a question or comment they want to make in terms of the report from Mr. Walsh? On my screen, I'm not seeing anybody. Oh, I see a hand from Mr. Kieselbach. Or is that a mistake? Okay, you have your hand up, believe it or not, on your screen. All right. All righty then, we will move on to the approval of to board member reports of activities and announcements. And I want to start out by mentioning that I received a nice letter from the League of Women Voters, and they indicated that as part of their ongoing task, which has gone on now for, gosh, I don't know how many decades, they're an excellent organization that keeps the public well informed on elections, and they're very nonpartisan and very, very enlightening to everyone. every election. They are now having individuals kind of monitor or occasionally sit in at meetings, not necessarily comment, but observing, and I guess reporting back to the league. And Dolores May has been assigned to do that with Meridian. I was hoping she would appear and end up speaking on public comment, but I haven't seen her appear. She's probably just monitoring. I'll mention that and ask other board members, do you have reports? Treasurer.
Thank you, Supervisor. Following up with what the manager mentioned in terms of staffing being reduced currently because of the COVID re-outbreak, we've been able to do that in the Treasury Utility Billing Department as well. I want to thank our residents. Typically in our tax season, which run from December to mid-February, we would have around 2,200 residents who would come to the counter to pay their taxes, sometimes the utility bills as well. We're well over 2,000. This year we did it, rough estimate, we had fewer than 200. So we're down 90%. And so I want to thank the residents who mailed in their taxes instead, put them in our drop box, or use our electronic payment system. Of course, it's been a lot safer for our staff and safer for our residents. So thank you again to our residents. We will continue to work with half staff until the current COVID surge abates, half from home, half here in the office. Again, caution and safety is the #1 guide, and we can do that only because our residents have been so cooperative about mailing and dropping off their payments. In the past month, I attended the March meeting of the CATA Board of Directors and the April EDC meeting. Next week I'll be attending with other board members the MTA annual convention, which is being held virtually again this year. In your packet, you'll see a treasurer's report for the first quarter. It's very close to last year's treasury report for the first quarter, which of course is very good news considering we've been through a pandemic that has shut down many operations. Our tax revenues are about where they should be. They're just 1% or 2% off. And we're very fortunate that our residents have been able to pay their taxes, as have most of our commercial operations as well. The second report you'll see from me is the arbitrage report from the Bingham CPA firm. We've hired them to look at our bond revenues. The federal government requires you to report to it any excess revenues you receive from your bonds that's in excess of your expenses. All that money we do not get to keep. We have to rebate that back to the federal government at the end of the first round of bonds, which will be 2 years from now. You look on page 71, you'll see that amount, which is $13,298. So that's how much we made in addition, above and beyond how much it costs us to float our bonds. So we'll keep track of that every year. It's booked this year as a liability. And in 2 years, we will be paying for the first 3 years of the road bond. That's my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other board members, reports, activities. Courtney Wazinski, please.
Hi, thank you, Supervisor. A few reports, although I have been absent, so I apologize. I did miss the last Environmental Commission meeting, but wanted to report that 2 green infrastructure grants have been approved by the commission. One is for Radmore Montessori School, and they propose to do improvements to both, there's 2 projects happening within one grant, and one of them is to improve the nature trail that they call the Pathway to Discovery that they use for natural learning, as well as they also have a greenhouse that they use for planting and harvesting mostly herbs and other vegetables that they'll be doing improvements on. So that's really exciting. The second grant goes to Hazlitt Middle School, and they have a kind of a courtyard in the middle of the middle school that's kind of gotten forgotten, as we see a lot of times in some of these schools. So they proposed to create an outdoor learning lab and classroom. So a lot of that will be science-based. And one of the great things about this proposal was that the students themselves will develop the plan and implementation of that. So that's really exciting. Other thing to report is there's a groundwater board management meeting tomorrow, tomorrow morning at 9. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Other board members? Okay, I have a couple more I'll mention. We received collectively from our Communications Commission, which Ms. Guthrie is our liaison to, a letter of support of the whole effort that's being undertaken as part of our goals to go forward with broadband here in the township, either alone or jointly with other communities. And we're very pleased to get that support from our Communications Commission. They do have somewhat of the expertise in this area. And I think the committee should probably be calling on them a little more than we have so far as we go forward, although we do have Ms. Guthrie there to help us out with that. The other thing I wanted to mention was it's kind of a bright and sunny day for the food pantry project. Deborah, do you want to mention anything about that, clerk? No, she says no. Apparently, one of the first food pantries is now being put in place at the Hazlitt, the library location. And that's exciting. This will be an opportunity for people to both donate and to receive both food and other staples and essentials that they may need, especially at times where they can't get them from other resources. So we thank Clerk Guthrie for being one of the big champions of this whole movement. Look forward to not only this pantry, but the other ones. That I know there's been one for a while over at the Lutheran Church on Dobie, and this is the second one I'm aware of. There'll be more coming. Thank you. Any other board members? If not, we will move on to the approval of the agenda. Ms. Jackson.
Move to approve the.
Oh. That's the trouble with the virtual meetings, I guess. Ms. Jackson had her hand up, but Mr. Opsimer, I must have missed on him. So which one do you want to actually move to approve the agenda? Ms. Jackson.
I move approval of the agenda as written
Okay.
for April 13, 2021.
And Mr. Opsimer?
Support.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Okay, we need a quick vote on the approval of the agenda.
All right, Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Trustee Opsimer,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Jackson.
Yes, from Meridian Township.
Thank you very much. Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Supervisor Stika.
Yes.
All right.
Good call there, Ms. Jackson.
The agenda is approved unanimously.
We're all going to get used to this eventually. Legislature always throwing something new at us. Okay, the next item is our consent agenda, and it has a number of things on it. The first one is our communications. Secondly, we have our minutes from March 16th, virtual regular board meeting. We have our bills, our quarter treasurer's report, which was referred to earlier, our annual arbitrage report, which was referred to earlier, the school tax collection agreements, and then finally the resolution of support for community project funding application. Is there a motion? Treasurer.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Okay. Support. Supported by Trustee Wazinski, I saw. All right. Then we need a vote on this.
All right, Trustee Wazinski. I was hoping your mic was still open. I could catch it real quick.
Yes.
All right, Trustee Opsimer,
Yes, from the city of Lansing.
Supervisor Stika,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
and Trustee Jackson.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Mr. DeShane, you had your hand up for a reason?
Yeah, I did want to make one comment before we move past the consent agenda. We do have our school tax collection agreements on the agenda for approval. It's a pro forma act. I wanted to point out that while many townships and cities do charge their school districts a percent or a flat fee for collecting school taxes, Meridian Township does not. We've always absorbed that cost, and as we all know, education is a prime value of our residents. So all that the township can do to enhance that by passing every dollar back to them, we do, and past boards have done. We continue that fine tradition of collecting school taxes with no fees passed on to our school districts. Something to be
Thank you.
proud of.
Thank you. Very good point. All right, next would be questions for the attorney. I don't believe we have any of those today. Hearings, I know we don't have any of those today. And we come to our action items, and we have 4. The first one is the 2021 Citizen Survey. And would someone like to put this on the table or put the motion forward? Ms. Jackson?
I move to approve the 2021 Community Survey Creation, Implementation, and Analysis with Cobalt Community Research for costs not to exceed $17,975 and authorize the township manager to create and sign the contract.
Is there support? Supported by Trustee Wazinski. Trustee Jackson, you want to comment on your motion?
Well, yes. So we've been talking about doing a community survey with someone else, with someone different than the last few surveys have been done. So my impression from the staff report is that the EDC or the wait a minute. So actually, it's the Economic Development Department has reviewed bids for a different survey for Meridian Township, and I think probably it's best at this point to have Director Clark talk to us about what is before us tonight.
Good point. Director Clark, would you like to come and give us a quick summary here before we go further in this discussion?
Sure can, thank you. Good evening, board and residents of Meridian Township. We did a bidding process with an RFP for organizations to submit their proposals for community surveys. The board approved the RFP, so we included all of the elements that the board requested, requesting references. We did include some language about cost parameters, but we also included language to say that if the cost exceeded our goal of less than $15,000, that wouldn't necessarily negate the organization from being included. We wanted, my impression from the board is that you wanted to see the capabilities of organizations and what it costs to do a community survey with options to see different margins of error. So that's also included in both proposals. Both proposals submitted information with references, guides to previous surveys that they've done for other communities, information about their businesses themselves, their margin of error typically, and what we would need to do in order to have a different margin of error if that was something that the board elected, and then as well as what it would cost to do so. Through my analysis, looking at both entities, they do a fantastic job. They're well received by every organization or community that they've worked for. But I did make a recommendation for Cobalt Community Research because they came in at less than almost, anywhere between $12,000 to $15,000 less than the competing proposal. And they also provide another opportunity for a community survey, which I know many department heads have indicated they would be interested in and possibly being able to follow up. And I do appreciate that both organizations would provide Meridian Township with a second opportunity to do a different survey. So no matter which organization we would go with, we would have the ability to do a follow-up survey on a different topic or the same topic or a different one. So that was my recommendation to go with them because they met all of our requirements. We're neck and neck with previous proposals, but came in at a more equitable cost.
Ms. Jackson, did you want to comment further then?
I would just say my understanding then is that this recommendation comes from you and Mr. Perry.
Yes, it does. And the bids were opened by Clerk Guthrie and myself.
I didn't understand that.
The bids were opened by the clerk as well as
I see, okay.
Ms. Clark.
Okay, and so, I approve of the choice that you are recommending. And looking through the material that was provided, I was impressed with the detail in which they provided relative to the cost and the expanse of the opportunities that they're presenting to us. I have no negative thoughts about the choice you're recommending.
Thank you. We do have the organizations on the line. If you have we do have the organizations on the line representing Cobalt and NRC. If you have specific questions.
Okay.
Treasurer, you had your hand up.
Thank you. Director Clark, were these the only 2 RFP responses we received back?
Yes.
And how many approximately organizations did we send it out to initially?
Myself personally, I submitted out to the 3 organizations that we initially had done some background work on, to NRC, Cobalt, and MSU. We posted this publicly on the internet, on our website, and through our typical bidding processes as well. So I don't know what other organizations looked at it outside of our typical communications process.
Okay. And I want to thank you for your work on this and also the recommendation before the board. Of course, we have the ability to accept your recommendation or to reject it, but you explain why you recommended it and your qualitative review of both proposals. And that's the kind of excellent work you've shown us all along. We appreciate your work on this project as well.
Thank you.
Board members, Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you. Yes, Director Clark, I'd like to echo, I really appreciate all the time you put into this. I know a lot of this was somewhat new in your roles and responsibilities, so I feel like you've done a really great job, and I certainly support your recommendation. I do think both proposals were fantastic. I think they did meet all the requirements that we were asking for, but like you said, there's a financial feasibility that goes along with the one. I had one question regarding Cobalt, and maybe this could go to Mr. St. Amour. There's written in there that there will be an opportunity for other resident responses outside of the sample and or randomized sample. And I'm wondering, since you're the expert in surveys, what happens if we get conflicting information between what is statistically valid and then this, other opportunity for community input?
First, thank you for the opportunity to participate in the bid process. I really appreciate it. The way that we handle the sampling is we have the random sample that's a mirror of the population. And then we have the opportunity for folks who aren't part of that sample to participate as well through the online portal. For the folks that are part of the sample, they all have a unique ID number that we use on the back end to make sure that they are valid responses and to make sure that they're not responding multiple times. When I share the results with you, they'll all be based on that sample. One of the documents that you'll also receive is a crosstab that has a lot of detail by individual demographic groups so that you have the voice of each of those individual groups throughout your community. One of those lines will also be for the folks who are not part of the sample that chose to complete the survey as well. They won't be representative of the community, but you'll see what those voices are. Typically, in our experience, it mirrors the responses overall for the rest of the survey, but there might be a couple of areas where the responses are different. For example, if there's a Friends of the Library group and they were particularly excited about sharing their opinions on the library, that's an example where you might have some different scores compared with the population overall. But from the perspective of mirroring the population, you want to look at the sample information, and the additional line on the non-sample is just to give you some additional insight into how those particular residents responded.
Great. Have you had experience with communities that may have some significant issues that are conflicting between the randomized sample and then the remainder of the community. And have you seen how that might affect decision-making in the community itself?
We have, and most communities have found the survey to be very useful because it allows some balancing and some context for what might be louder voices in the community that aren't necessarily representative, or it might help validate that those loud voices are representative of the community. So it'll give you that additional perspective to put those into context. Typically, though, we don't see a difference with folks who volunteer to take the survey unless there's a particular issue that's particularly important, in which case it's pretty clear from the responses that these are folks that are interested in this particular issue. And it doesn't create conflicts because the survey is created really to be representative. It just helps put those other voices in a bit more perspective.
Fantastic, thank you.
You're welcome.
One more thing, you mentioned the how you develop the randomized sample and you mirror the characteristics of the community. Can you just tell me, like, it sounded very fantastic. Can you tell me in layman's term how you do that and how you use the GIS and all of those other things to identify?
Sure. So part of it depends on which particular database we're drawing the sample from. So typically it's voters or general residency or something along those lines. We take all of those, we put them into a database, and then we create random number. Well, we create a series of numbers, and then we use a random number generator through Trinity College in Dublin. They use atmospheric noise and create a true random number that way. Then we test it to make sure that the sampling that we have matches the population based on some demographic variables. So once we know it mirrors, then we know we're good to go. And then that's used to do the sampling and the mailing.
Great. So our residents can be confident that their demographics are being accurately represented.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Trustee Jackson, you have more you want to talk about?
Actually, Trustee Wazinski reminded me of a couple of issues that I'd like more information about. The first had to do with the database used to create the random sample. And I had for some time concerns about using voter lists, because as I learned in our discussions about recreational marijuana, there are residents in our township that for one reason or another cannot vote. And so they would not be included on the voter rolls. And I'm interested to know what other kinds of databases are used to make sure that we include as many references and as many demographic groups that live in the township in the survey.
Certainly, and that would be one of the details that we work through with staff as we go deeper into the process if we're selected. But typically, communities use voter lists. You could use the DMV list. There's commercial lists that you can get that pull data from a number of different sources, including warranties and just a number of different elements. Utility bills are often used, could also use tax bills, could use a fusion of all of those. So there's a number of ways of getting at that. And then along with that, we still have the opportunity for folks who aren't part of the sample to still be represented. And in addition to keeping them as, labeled as non-sample, we can also do some additional coding. So when they go on and complete it online, if there's a particular group like the Friends of the Library, or if there was a particular Hispanic business group, for an example, we could give them a special code and have them broken out as a separate line as well, just to, again, make sure that those voices come through and those ideas aren't being washed out in the overall numbers that you get for the township.
Okay. And a second question, in looking at the description of the options from a foundational versus enhanced or advanced option, I noticed something called the Community 360 Metrics Report. Can you explain to me what that means?
Sure. That's some additional data that we provide. It's not actually part of the survey, but it's a pretty useful set to have. It's an annual report, And it includes things like how the demographics are projected to change over the next 5 years. We look at recent people who've recently moved into the township compared with the rest of the townships. You can see how they're different because often those numbers don't show up in the census for a while. And that gives you a sense of how things are changing, but they haven't quite shown up on the radar yet. Often there's a significant difference in terms of some of the age demographics, often some of the psychographics when you're looking at things like what the attitudes are, communication preferences, some of those kind of elements. We look at how much residents are spending in different categories, how much we project them to spend. We look at how much they're spending by item within the township, how much they're spending outside. So are they buying things here, or is there leakage with them spending externally? How much they're spending on internet purchases. We look at housing affordability. A lot of those kind of things are boiled into that report. It's a useful thing from an economic development standpoint because you can share it internally with staff for planning. You can share it with businesses to support their marketing. And if businesses are looking at coming into the township, it really gives you a great set of data that those businesses can use as they look at you as a potential location.
And finally, I'd just like to note that I was very happy to see that you had some experience already in Meridian Township, even though your company is based in Charlotte, I believe. Yes.
Correct.
And to know that you have done some volunteer work in Meridian Township with one of our park projects. So welcome to our area.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a great town. Enjoy being there. We've been to your parks. We've been to your restaurants.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you. Mr. St. Amor, I've got a couple more questions. First of all, I want to thank Trustee Jackson for her excellent point. We do have a significant population that are property owners, parents, very active in the community, but have not yet attained their citizenship and therefore cannot be on the voter rolls. A previous clerk made a comment a couple of years ago saying that since they can't vote, they don't count. I am certain that the entire board now would reject that comment out of hand. So I'm glad that you've already got some metric or some strategies involved that will reach out to that group as well. In terms of the group you're going to gather from us, does that change this quote at all in terms of the group? Obviously, taking the voter rolls is one thing; it's pretty easy to do. But if you're looking at many more lists, tax rolls, utility bills, et cetera, that's going to be more work on your part. So, what are we paying for with this initial quote?
So no, the price wouldn't change.
Okay, very good. And then getting back to the secondary survey issue, and on the one hand, I like it because I've been discussing this with members of the community the past month or so, and they say, oh, really? I've never gotten a survey. I've lived here 30 years. No one's ever surveyed me. What's this survey all about? They don't believe that we actually take a valid survey because they've never been asked. So I see the benefit in allowing people to take it. At the same time, again, getting back to Trustee Jackson's point, we have at least one very contentious issue on the ballot that will be part of the survey that may or may not be in the ballot at some point. But if we got some definitive answers from the statistical survey, but then a different answer from the volunteer survey, to me, that would just muddle the issue and would leave us in the same position we're in now, which is we're not sure how the public feels.
Yeah, well, I just want to comment that I'm pleased that what you're talking about here is a social scientific survey. In other words, while there's going to be additional information available, as you've indicated, with people having a chance to express views, et cetera. The bottom line is the hard numbers that we're going to get from you are going to be based on a scientifically created survey that samples the community. And I appreciate that very much. Ms. Jackson, you had your hand up again.
That's correct. Depending on how it's structured, one of the things that we often do, if there's a contentious issue that you want to test in the survey, is also ask for reasons that people, the best reasons for, in favor, and the best reasons against. And that helps you just, have a more rounded view of what the concerns are. And it also helps with the communication. As things go forward one way or the other, you're able to make sure that you're reflecting the values of the community back to them as you make your final decision.
Ms. Jackson, you were going to comment or not?
I would just say that regardless of how the information is acquired, the board has no commitment and no set method with which by which to use whatever results we get. And so the decisions on a contentious issue or any other issues is still left to the board after final decisions on any question are still left to the board to make after all of the information is gathered.
Certainly an excellent point. Our history is that every 3 years we do a survey and we find ourselves often alluding to it, but as Ms. Jackson indicated, that doesn't necessarily determine anything, but it certainly guides us in many, many ways. Other board members, what are our next steps if we adopt this, Ms. Clark?
I will reach out. If we go with the proposal, the recommendation to go with Cobalt, I will begin the first introductory step in the timeline of establishing what we're going to be asking on the survey, meeting and identifying the key questions and options, and prepare the contract for Manager Walsh to sign and authorize.
Mr. Opsmer, you had your hand up there.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just one question for William. So am I reading it correct when I look at the enhanced having a random sample universe of 2,000 households? Is that what that table is telling us?
The enhanced is actually a random sample of 1,500. And there's an option down in the additional options if you wanted to bump that up.
Oh, the advanced. Sorry, I meant to say the advanced. So the advanced is...
The advanced is 2,000.
Okay. And so that would compute with the, that is basically the cost for that advanced one is the cost that the motion that is for us would approve for.
Yes, sir.
Correct, yes. I selected the highest in the event. I said not to exceed, just in the event that the board was able to either pick foundational or enhanced or advanced.
Okay, I appreciate that. I like the advanced approach and going up to 2,000. I just wanted to clarify because the table earlier on in the RFP response on page 3 had the 1,500 sample bolded, but I figured just wanted to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting what we were approving. And then I would just comment briefly, I do appreciate Director Clark's work on this. And I also am, you know, we can do the online portal, but there is no statistical validity to it. So if we do it, it's great. But it's not hard in today's, you know, social media environment to get, you know, 20 respondents to go in there and quickly change, you know, the sampling dramatically for that online portal that's available to everybody. And depending on who we promote it to, that's gonna, you know, drive who responds to it. But I like the methodology that's outlined throughout this, and I think Cobalt does great work, and I really appreciated seeing all the work that you've done in Royal Oak and other communities across Michigan. Thank you.
That's good for me to hear because I know that Mr. Opsmer has some expertise in this area and I appreciate his comments. Ms. Jackson.
One more point. You include a timeline, a proposed timeline, which is about 10 weeks. I mean, 9 weeks. What's that about? 3 months, 2.5 months for completion. Do you foresee any problems with meeting that proposed timeline?
The main variable is just getting to the point where the survey is approved by staff and how much involvement the board has. So I've seen that happen in a week and I've seen it happen in 2 months. So once you come to the point where the survey is something that you're comfortable with, it takes 6 weeks until you have results in your hands. That's the main variable.
Thank you.
So the parts you can control is the 6 weeks, right? Is that what you're saying? And then we're in control of the other part. Ms. Wizinski.
Sorry, a couple follow-up questions. You talked about marketing in, or trustee Opsimer. The other proposal kind of went into depth on how they could assist with marketing the survey community-wide. Does Cobalt have that ability to help? We have a fantastic communications department, but is there opportunity for how we can make sure we reach everybody and everybody has an opportunity?
We're happy to collaborate with your communications department. We have examples of past surveys and things that other communities have used that have worked well from a talking point standpoint and in terms of getting the word out. So we're happy to do that.
Okay, fantastic. Last question. You mentioned that you do and can provide different languages if needed, either translation or interpretation. And so we do have a large Asian population, multiple descents. So if that's something that proves to be a barrier, is that something you would be able to help with? And is it included in the original cost?
So there's two ways of doing it. One way is to actually create a translation for each of those languages. That's something that would be an additional cost. It tends to be more expensive to do that. The other way is we can take the survey and set it up so it's compatible with Google Translate. So we would set up the portal. It'd have the access to the survey, but if they need in other languages, they can click on Google Translate. There'd be a PDF version of the survey they could then pull in and run through and have the translation available. And that would be at no cost.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question for Director Clark. Whatever happened to our other potential applicant, the Michigan State Institute? They decided not to apply?
They did. I did receive a communication from them that they felt that their proposal would be an exorbitant cost to our community. I did tell them that I still was interested in seeing what their proposal would include, even if it was a high cost, but they still did not submit information.
I assumed it was something like that. Thank you. Yes, Treasurer.
I appreciate Trustee Wazinski's questions about language. And back to you, Mr. St. Amor, most communities use the Google Translate option, and if they had any issues with that, if you started with that and then had to go back and actually do a physical translation of the survey afterwards?
I have not had that issue.
Okay.
So usually most folks who are not English speakers have an English speaker in the home or someone that they work with closely just for generally functioning within society. So that has not been a significant issue.
It's a great point. And we provide no translation services for other township services, although we probably should consider that at some point, and largely because our population is very adaptable and have other resources and have been able to translate the communications such as bills that we send out to them currently. Well, thank you.
Okay. Are we about ready to vote on this? The motion as made was based on the recommendation, and that is to go with Cobalt as our research survey firm. So if we're ready to vote, Ms. Guthrie, please call.
All right, Supervisor Stika.
I vote yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane.
Yes.
Trustee Jackson.
Yes.
Trustee Opsimer.
Yes.
And Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you all very much, and thank you, Mr. St. Amor, for joining us, and thank you for all your hard work on this, Ms. Clark.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All right. Our next item on the agenda is the expansion of Ready Ride services. Treasurer DeShane. I move to request that the Cadillac expand Meridian Ready Ride to include the following service locations: the Autism Centers of Michigan, Lansing Urgent Care, Hazlet Gideon Woods Early Care and Preschool, Hazlet Monticello's Market and Butcher Block, Hope Network Neuro Rehab, and East Lansing and Pleasantries. I'm sorry, let me step back. Hope Network Neuro Rehabilitation in East Lansing and Pleasantries in East Lansing. Yeah.
Support.
Supported by Mr. Opsmer. All right. Discussion, Mr. DeShane.
We discussed this last week. We want Ready Ride to be as available for as many of our residents to as many locations as we can feasibly do it without pushing the Ready Ride bus way outside the township, which would then decrease availability. These are all very reasonable locations. The one I wanted to add was Pleasantries to provide the access for medical and recreational marijuana for any resident. And the others came from you and Trustee Opsimer. I think they're all good locations, and I think they will enhance Ready Ride.
They actually came from Trustee Opsmer, who I thought did a good job of discerning other places we need to go. Mr. Opsmer.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed each of the locations and their merits, so I won't rehash that. I did talk about this effort that the board was undertaking at the Transportation Commission meeting last month. And Commissioner Bob Lovell had a really good idea, which was that we should consider talking to CATA about the possibility of including the multimodal gateway station. And so that is obviously a location that is not near the township's boundaries, but is on Hagedorn Road, but it is a multimodal transportation location. And so providing access to our other transit opportunities to it is important. So I was wondering if maybe Treasurer DeShane could reach out and talk to CATA about that, because I think that is also a worthwhile thing. However, there could be logistical issues with that location. I think for the most part it would work out, but I think we should talk to CATA about that prospect.
So what I'm hearing is that
Thank you.
Rather than hold this up, we'll go forward with this. But your suggestion, Trustee Opsimer, is that we look into seriously the possibility of the multimodal addition later.
Yeah, I think we can proceed right now with these. I think we should have a conversation with CATA about that other location because it's highly unique. But
Gotcha.
When I was on the CATA board, we did work with CATA to get the fixed route line on Hagedorn Road to go in the multimodal gateway. Previously, it just dropped you on Hagedorn Road, and it's quite a walk between the actual station itself and those bus stops. So there is precedent in a different fashion of connecting transit.
Excellent suggestion. So what's in front of us is to go forward with this, and then in the meantime, we will have staff be looking into the other and Mr. DeShane and the others. Ms. Guthrie.
Sure. We can certainly.
I called on Ms. Guthrie. I'm sorry.
Okay, please go ahead.
How is CATA able to expand Ready Ride services financially? How does that work? Or is it just self-sustaining, like from the Ready Ride, from people booking Ready Ride services? Just trying to understand how they expand it under the current budget framework.
Ready Ride is heavily subsidized by CATA. They take federal grants and maximize them. Trustee Opsimer brought in a couple to our attention 3 years ago, JARDA, which is a job access federal grant, and I forgot the name of the other one, which allowed us to expand our services. But when the question was brought before the Transportation Commission of privatizing Ready Ride, the thing that no private competitor could bring was the significant subsidy that CATA provides for Ready Ride. It's close to 60% of the cost of it is paid by CATA, finding grant sources or other CATA revenue. The balance is paid by the CATA Ready Ride Millage here in Meridian Township, but CATA already does subsidize it quite a bit out of the federal funding and other grants they have available to us.
So it's not a significant financial burden on CATA to be able to expand services.
No, and you look at these locations, they're all very close to the edge of the township. So, and that's the problem, the issue with multimodal is that would send it 5-6 miles outside the township border and then back to access the multimodal. So the reason these are brought up and need to be approved by the board is the initial Ready Ride said all Ready Ride proposal only allowed for rides within the township borders. And so when we passed the first expansion 3 years ago, CATA was fine doing it. They just needed to hear from us that they had permission to do it with our Ready Ride millage, and we said, yes, you do.
And does CATA ask permission from these locations first before they provide this kind of service to these companies, or what, is there a process for that, or?
Well, because Ready Ride isn't a fixed transit large bus, and it's, you know, it is a multi-vehicle bus, but they do that no more than you would have Uber or Lyft calling ahead of time to say it's okay if we pull in our vehicle to your parking lot. In virtually all these cases, these are businesses that want to attract additional customers, so they're glad to have the Ready Ride bus there.
Thank you, Treasurer DeShane.
Trustee Oxmer, I'm sure you have something to say on this.
Yeah, I think Treasurer DeShane covered it pretty well, but really what we're doing is addressing that rigidity of having only the service located within the township's borders and cutting service off, you know, immediately on the border. And so what we've been looking at since 2018 is, are there facilities located essentially adjacent or immediately adjacent in some instances that are of value? So these are rides that likely would occur. So we're not necessarily incurring new rides to the system. These rides would already occur. The rider would just go somewhere else, or it would become a ride on SpecTran, which is the regional paratransit. However, SpecTran is not open to the public at large. It's the elderly, persons with disabilities. You know, there's strict criteria for SpecTran ridership. But many of these facilities, you know, if you're going to like, you know, Hope Network Neuro Rehabilitation, they already have SpecTran buses bringing riders and patrons to that facility. And they actually don't know the difference because the buses themselves really are not different. However, sometimes with SpecTran and Ready Ride, they will utilize the vans. But for the most part, you know, it's the vans and the short buses that pull up, and the facility itself and the owners of these facilities, really, there's no difference from their purpose of whether it's a SpecTran bus or a Ready Ride bus, and they're already seeing SpecTran customers coming to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Ms. Jackson, yes.
At this point, I think it would be important, at least for me, to reiterate what Ready Ride actually is. And a part of my understanding is that Ready Ride is designed to support and augment the fixed routes service of CATA, which means that rather than a service like Lyft, which is probably arranged to give you door-to-door service, Ready Ride is more designed to give you curb-to-curb service. And that distance also, that a part of Ready Ride's function is to get people to the CATA fixed service, as opposed to just taking people to designated sites, possible sites like we're establishing here. Can I get clarification or?
I believe you're correct in terms of, you know, CATA. I mean, Ready Ride was created with the township supporting it through a millage, and of course it's underwritten, et cetera, as we heard by both CATA and through grants, et cetera. But the idea was to fill in all the gaps because we have only very limited fixed routes within our township. Yet we have a large population, almost as big as East Lansing, and a lot of people don't want to go places. So Ready Ride created a way to get people to those fixed routes, but it also takes people to important locations. And we have, starting in 2018, kind of expanded it beyond the township boundaries because of the importance of those locations. and the reliance on it. Mr. Opsford, anything you want to add to that?
Just simply that to Trustee Jackson's point, they are synchronized, and you can get your fare box. You can get a transfer ticket from Ready Ride to jump on the fixed route bus. So for me up in Hazlet, I could take Ready Ride to like the Okemos Meyer station, and then take the one route all the way downtown. So, and I can get a transfer ticket so that I don't pay two fares. So they are synchronized systems, and yeah, it is designed to get people to the fixed route if they need to go throughout the region via fixed route service.
Thank you.
And Treasurer DeShane.
At Trustee Jackson's question, Ready Ride has actually evolved, I think, 20 years ago. No one anticipated perhaps the number of school children that are now riding it. Parents now rely on Ready Ride to bring their children home from music practice or sports practice, or get them to school early in some cases now if they can't take the other bus, or they aren't eligible for a bus. So it's evolved. And when you're looking at a fourth grader, for example, you may trust the Ready Ride curb to curb, but you might have some real hesitation. I certainly would as a parent. Most of us would to expect that child to then transfer to a fixed ride bus. It just wouldn't happen. But for younger elementary students that are using Ready Ride, the curb to curb service is a new element of Ready Ride that's working very well for many families in the township, and is something to be proud of.
Okay, are we ready to vote on this now? Ms. Guthrie, would you call the roll, please?
All right, Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Jackson,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes, Supervisor Stika,
Yes.
Trustee Opsimer,
Yes.
and Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 6-0.
Thank you all very much. Good discussion. We now move on to the National Child Abuse Prevention Month resolution. The clerk, Ms. Guthrie, has proposed a couple of resolutions here, and this is the first one, so I'll leave it to her to mention what it is and tell us about it first.
I'm very appreciative for Alex Brace joining us earlier to talk about children's small talk and the work that they do in our region, and the work that they do with our township police. Child Abuse Prevention Month and awareness is, I've been a longtime supporter and advocate for these organizations. And, I was my mom was a divorce attorney at Legal Aid of Central Michigan. And so I grew up seeing the effect on my mother as an attorney representing clients, victims of abuse, and had to go as a child, had to go to domestic violence shelters with my mom because she didn't have any daycare at that time. So I saw a lot, and so this is really dear to my heart, and I think it's important to recognize the efforts that our community does, and to show support for those efforts, and to spread awareness. And so that is why I bring it to you today. And I had received, as a supporter and advocate of Children's Small Talk, I had received an email from them, about their Pinwheel program. And I had seen that they were, working with our Parks Department to put in some pinwheel gardens in our community. And I thought, well, what better way for the Meridian Township Board to show support than to do a resolution. And so that's why I bring it before you today.
So you're making a motion and you want to read it to us, the motion?
Yes. Have I ever read a motion before? I don't think I have.
Welcome to the club.
This is my first one. I make a motion to move to approve the resolution recognizing April 2021 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Meridian Township.
Supported by Ms. Jackson. All right. Anything further needs to be said on this? If not, we need a vote.
All right, Treasurer DeShane,
He's muted.
Trustee Jackson,
Yes.
trustee Absmer,
Yes.
trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
clerk Guthrie votes yes, supervisor Stika,
Yes,
motion carries 6-0.
thank you. Our next action item is also here at the behest of Clerk Guthrie. And this has to do with recognizing Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which is also April. And Ms. Guthrie, would you like to tell us about this?
Same thing, longtime supporter of sexual assault awareness, and I know the work that our police department does with area organizations and our county organizations do, and the important role that we have as leaders in our community to support sexual assault awareness and to do whatever we can to help curtail sexual assault in our community. And I'm very appreciative of efforts that our township staff has done in the past, and the leadership of our township manager and leadership of our directors in sexual assault awareness and addressing this in our community.
Yes, our community has worked hard in this area. We've had some sad situations we've had to deal with, and I think we've stepped forward as best you possibly can in those situations. Chief Plogger, you want to mention anything about what goes on in your department with regard to sexual assault?
Well, we work hand in hand with Small Talk. They provide us trainers to come in and increase community awareness to identify those who may be victims and or potential victims of assault, so that we can provide services and support to those folks and conduct investigations and increase awareness. We also have a detective that's dedicated to specifically investigating these cases with quite a bit of detailed training. The training and the methodology changes with best practices over time. And Detective Becky Payne is well respected in this area. Regionally, people call and seek her expertise.
I know Manager Walsh has really stepped up in this area. Manager, you have anything you want to add to this discussion?
No, sir. I just appreciate everyone recognizing how important it is and our former and our ongoing work in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. You want to read the motion, Ms. Guthrie?
I move to approve the resolution recognizing Sexual Assault Awareness Month in Meridian Township.
Okay. So supported by Ms. Jackson. All right. Gotta get those hands up fast, people. I know, I said Jackson. All right. Any further discussion? Yes, Ms. Jackson.
I would like to add and note publicly that I learned, and I think everyone should be aware, that one of the items included in our staff report is the information that Meridian Township has specifically established in the township's personnel policy manual, workplace expectations, that is called, that any type of sexual or other unlawful harassment or discrimination by employees of the township will not be tolerated and should be reported immediately to the Human Resources Department. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to note that and to reemphasize that as a part of our community values, including relative to our interest in working towards more diversity, inclusion, and equity.
Thank you. All right, are we ready for a vote then? Oh, yes, Trustee Absmer, yes.
Yeah, I just briefly wanted to thank Clerk Guthrie for bringing both of these resolutions forward. We have not taken these up during my time on the board, but this is a very important issue. And I think, when you look at the prevalence of this, so many families are impacted, but it's not an issue that we talk about, and it's survivors deal with a great deal of trauma. And when we look at delayed disclosure, especially for children, childhood survivors, you know, the average age of disclosure being age 52 tells you a lot about what survivors go through, and then their families as well. And I thank you for bringing this forward, because I know that we have a lot of folks in this community who are still trying to heal. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. DeShane.
I do want to thank Clerk Guthrie for bringing this before the board. Trustee Oppenheimer is right. We haven't looked at these the past 4 years that I've been on the board, yet 3 years plus we were very much immersed in these issues with the Breanne Randall atonement that we attempted to do. And I want to thank Clerk Guthrie for bringing this to us, and also thank the manager and Chief Plaga for implementing those changes that we talked about, the result of what happened with Breanne Randall, and making us a better department, better police department, and a better township to work in as a result of the lessons learned. Of course, we continue to learn those lessons. We know we're far from perfect, but we've acknowledged that we can do better, and we are doing better. So thank you, Manager Walsh and Chief Plaga, for that.
Agreed. Anyone else? Okay, we need a vote.
All right, Trustee Osmer,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Supervisor Stika,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes, Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
and Trustee Jackson.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Clerk. We're now moving on to 13 of our agenda, which is got 3 parts to it. First one, A, zoning amendment number 21010 from the Township Board, amendment of the Code of Ordinances to require Township Board approval of a special use permit for motor vehicle sales and service establishments and automobile dealerships in either a C2 or a C3 commercial zoning district.
Good evening, board members. I'll just briefly walk through this amendment as the supervisor mentioned. The amendment is going to require motor vehicle sales and service establishments, new and used car sales to be subject to a special use permit that has to be approved by the Township Board. Currently in the C2 zoning district, new car sales are allowed by special use permit subject to the Planning Commission approval. So the change to that section, we took the term car and replaced it with automobile, being more generic as a definition to include trucks and vans. So where you see car, that should all say automobile. And then we left the standards the same. So those minimum of a 4-acre site, no used car sales unless they're ancillary to the use, and then again, no body shops would be permitted in that C2 district. In the C3 district, currently motor vehicle sales and services were allowed by right, which also we're covering automobile dealerships. We moved that from by right down to special use permit. And then we did add a definition for motor vehicle. We never had that in our ordinance before, and we thought it was important to have that term defined. And then we added again, new automobile dealerships and also used automobile dealerships. So the only place used automobiles could be sold is in the C3. And again, those special use permits would be subject to the Township Board. And because the board is going to make the final determination, we had to add a section under our special use permit requirements outlining that process for the applicant going through and getting a special use permit approved by the Township Board. And the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on it, and they've recommended approval. And if you have any questions, be glad to answer them.
Thank you. Trustee Opsmer, you really brought this to us. You noticed the need for this change when we had a change over on Grand River in terms of what was happening with the dealership. Would you like to discuss this with us or bring forward the discussion?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Mark did a very good job of outlining the history and where we are mechanically, and the difference between new and used and C and C2 and C3. So I won't overview that, but what I will do is briefly remind the board of the amendment and the context of the amendment that was adopted in 2018, which was when Jeff Williams was applying to expand his auto dealership on Jolly Road. And at that time, he had an adjacent parcel that he was trying to zone to C3 to conform with our ordinance, because our ordinance at that time did not allow dealerships in C2 at all. For whatever reason, the board at that time did not want to approve that rezoning. And instead of approving that rezoning, they went about allowing him to develop that parcel by amending the zoning ordinance in a very broad fashion to allow for dealerships in C2, which is, C2 is very prevalent throughout the township. You know, from, you look at the zoning map from downtown Okemos to large chunks of Grand River Avenue, and then even, you know, smaller commercial areas like at Lake Lansing and Marsh and things of that nature. So it really opened up the prospect of dealerships locating in many different places throughout the township, when previously they had been constrained to C3, and the decision seemed to arise based on one rezoning request from an applicant specific to their site. So when I talked to Supervisor Stika about it, and the history that Mark, or Director Kieselbach, and Principal Planner Menzer were kind enough to be able to share with us, we felt, you know, especially given the intensity of the use, you know, a dealership is very similar to a big box retailer. What they don't have is they don't have the square footage. You know, their showrooms are not small, and their service centers are not small, but they don't rise to the 25,000 square foot threshold of a big box store in terms of requiring a special use permit. But overall, the impervious area that they create through their service centers, their showrooms, and then the large impervious parking lot that's required of a dealership really makes it very similar to a big box store. And we felt like just treating these special use permits the same as we treat those large developments was the appropriate course to take. And I was happy that the Planning Commission agreed with that. And I think the only other thing to really note, even prior to that 2008 change, I think it was worth looking at this, because prior to 2008, as Director Kieselbach noted, it was a use by right in C3. So what is C3? Well, it's the mall area, it's the Meyer area, and then it's kind of most of the parcels wrapped and bound by Marsh Road, Central Park, and Grand River. And so, you know, our future land use map now includes mixed core as a land use designation on the future land use map. And we have designated much of the C3 as mixed core. And obviously a dealership, which takes up a large swath of land for one use, is not, you know, is not really what we envisioned for many of those parcels. So I thought regulating it through the special use permit, but just having more oversight was the right course. That's it.
Does anyone have anything negative they want to say about this proposal? Any further backup on the positive side to what has been presented already by Trustee Opsimer or others? Ms. Jackson? There you go.
No negative comments. I support the amendment as written. I do have a question. I haven't been able to find yet whether the term body shop is defined and distinguished in the ordinance.
You're right. It's not in the definitions, but it's an allowed use in our industrial zoning district.
So it's not included in the definition like automobile versus car. So my question is, but everybody understands what it means and the difference between a dealership and a repair shop, right?
I think so. We haven't had a issue before on it.
I'm just wondering. I didn't find the definition, and I wondered because that's an exception, a related exception. I just hope everyone is clear on what that means and what that use actually refers to.
Okay.
Most dealerships have body shops, Mark. How does that fit into all this?
Well, the way this is written in our ordinance, a body shop would have to be located in an industrial zoning. Certainly, one of the dealerships could have one on another location. They can't have it on the same location as the dealership in C2 or C3.
It's interesting because I know for a fact that dealerships in the township do have body shops as part of their dealerships with right next to their, just right in the back.
And again, you have to remember the existing dealerships on Grand River were approved prior to us having C2 and C3 zoning in that. And when we adopted that, that's when this change came of where you could have a body shop. So some of those could have one.
Are we being too limiting by not allowing new dealerships that come along now to have a body shop? I mean, that seems to be part of the normal business of a dealership to do repairs and body work and is part of their selling of a vehicle.
Is that, we would have to amend this if we're going to do that.
I throw that out there. Mr. Deshane and then Ms. Guthrie. No, you went from unmute to mute, Bill. You went reverse.
To your point, Graf Chevrolet has a body shop about 5 miles.
Merrill Ford, yes, go ahead.
They have a body shop outside the township, in Williamstown Township, and they seem to do very well. I appreciate the edification on this and understanding that the C3, the dealerships can develop by right. We all know of the fiasco with LaFontaine and the assault they made to that property, and then they walked away from it. But we also, I've gotten a lot of comments from constituents saying, how the heck you let that happen? That didn't come before us. It only made the level of the planning commission that was last time. So I like this change a lot, that any dealership would come before the township requiring a special use permit. We're not likely to see many. There just aren't that many big parcels there, but should it be proposed again, we should have a chance to see it. A dealership is a major footprint, as pointed out by Director Huseback and Trustee Opsimer. It's a big box size footprint on the township, and we need to see those proposals before they get approved and before someone like LaFontaine goes in and cuts down 300 trees and walks away from it. So this is a good change. I like it. I thank Trustee Opsimer for bringing it to the board, and I look forward to discussing it further and likely approving it. Thank you.
Ms. Guthrie, you were next.
Was just going to make the comment that I'm not sure if they're necessarily body shops. They're mechanics. They provide auto mechanic services, but if you need body work, actual body work on your car, like Graf, you have to go elsewhere to a different body shop, like Treasurer Deshane mentioned. So there's,
they do it on site.
I'm just saying that I'm not sure that necessarily all of them are body shops where you have body repair work done on your vehicle.
But I know Merrill Ford does. They fixed mine just a few months ago. Anyway, so I'm just wondering if it's an oversight or if it's purposeful. That's where I'm at. Mr. Opsimer.
I would, on this question of body shops and whether they should be allowed or not allowed, I guess, Director Kieselbach, so the C2 and C3 zonings, the approval of the existing 3 dealerships predates the new zoning categories that we have for the dealerships. So did prior to that change in the zoning ordinance, did we allow body shops? Do we know?
Yes, that was an allowed use as part of the dealership. But with the.
And then we put this restriction.
You're correct. Yep. We moved body shops to industrial.
So
when
did we
adopted C3?
Okay. Okay, so basically we haven't had anybody, LaFontaine was the first dealership that really expressed interest under the ordinance as it is today.
Right, and their property was zoned C2. So they had not proposed as part of their special use permit a body shop.
Okay. If it's not a problem for the dealership, I don't have a problem with it. I just want to make sure we're not doing something accidentally, contrary to what, you know, the industry is after.
I would say it might be worth. Yeah, my thought is it might be worth Director Clark reaching out and just finding out, you know, if the dealerships are operating a body shop or if they're just doing mechanical. I mean, I defer to Director Kieselbach on how to go about it, but it seems like we could just make the ordinance permissive so that it would be a consideration of the special use permit.
Okay, and we can check. I don't.
I'm not certain.
Yeah. And the Ford dealership may be the only one that has done it. I don't believe Nissan has any body shop, no.
The Ford dealership may be the only one old enough to have existed that long. But they definitely have a body shop. I know that for a fact.
Okay.
All right, well, I guess we'll leave it where it is. And then
I would be leery of some.
I'm sorry, what was that, Mr.
Sorry, I'm sorry. My internet connection.
Yeah, you're on a
My
delay.
apologies. My internet connection is very bad.
Yeah, you're on a delay. Sometimes.
But
we
I was
walk
just going to say, I would be. Yeah, I would be leery of approving body shops in a lot of the C2 where you're getting very close to single family residential. So that would be my concern.
I guess my summary was that we should leave it as it is unless we have a hue and cry from applicants, and then we can restudy the matter. But apparently we don't have that hue and cry from applicants because it sounds like the only dealer body shop we have is the long-standing one. That's Merrill Ford. Okay. Other than freestanding body shops in industrial zones.
Yeah.
All right, then is there anything more to talk about on this, or are we ready to have the staff bring this back to us for the adoption steps? Which I think, what, takes 2 steps, Mark?
Yes, we could have it ready for introduction at your next meeting.
All righty. We'll go on then to B, which is utility shutoff extension. Mr. Perry.
Yes, good evening, Supervisor Stika, members of the board. Appreciate the opportunity to bring this item up. As the board is aware, early on during the COVID-19 pandemic, the board was quick to put forth a moratorium on water shutoffs, recognizing the importance of good sanitation for people, regardless of inability to pay. Since that time, quickly after that, the state of Michigan jumped on board and actually did an executive order, and then a state law followed. But that state law now has expired, and expired on March 31st, 2021. So now we're kind of in a position where we need to determine maybe an end date for our program here locally. And what I'm recommending is June 30th of 2021. And the reason that is the CDC put together a moratorium on evictions, and they're using the date of June 30th, 2021 too. So it does a couple things. One, it coincides with the CDC recommendation. and also allows us then to start reaching out to some of these residential customers that haven't been paying their bill, and allows us to start putting together payment plans and working with those individuals that may not have been able to pay their bills. The other issue is, fortunately, here in the community, we've not seen a large uptick or increase of need regarding abeyance of their bill due to COVID-related issues. Actually, our numbers have held pretty steady, and the shut-off list pretty much has been consistent status quo than what we've seen historically. So again, that's our recommendation, and it's on for tonight, so we can actually have a date set and we can move forward. Thank you.
Trustee Opsmer.
I would move that we suspend our rules so that this item can be taken up this evening.
Supported by Jackson. All those in favor of suspending the rules so we can take this up immediately, put your hand in front of your face. Clerk Guthrie, I think we have all 6 hands. Is that correct? Okay. All right, we need a motion then, Mr. Opsmer.
I move to direct the Department of Public Works to suspend the use of water shutoffs for non-payment until June 30th, 2021.
Okay. Supported by the treasurer? Or was that where you have your hand up for a comment?
And the comment.
And a comment. Okay, we'll start out with Mr. Opsmer.
Yeah, I would briefly just like to thank Deputy Manager Perry for bringing this to us. Given the rise in COVID cases that we're experiencing right now, I suspect we'll have to come back and look at another extension for this. So I hope you'll bring this back to us when we get to early June and we start approaching this date. But even with the vaccinations and everything, the rise in cases that we are seeing right now tells us that we still have quite a ways to go through this. And there isn't a huge need in the community in terms of the number of water customers. However, for each and every family trying to get by right now, it's very critical that they have this access. So thank you for bringing this to us.
Mr. DeShane.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Manager Perry, for summarizing this issue. It is correct that we don't have an excessively large number of people who are way behind their water bills and sewer bills. It's about what it would be in normal times, which is again a good thing for our residents. And before we ever shut anyone off, we make multiple notifications to them to give them warnings. We call them, we email them, we write them letters, and the actual number of shutoffs for any given shutoff day is typically well under 2 dozen, often as few as 1 dozen out of 15,000 parcels. So we do our best to minimize that number and work with people and set up payments. The one leverage we've lost with not having the ability to threaten shutoffs, though, is for properties that are not owned by the tenant. And so a resident could game the system, or a tenant could game the system and let their water bill go on excessively high, knowing when they move out, they're not going to be stuck with that bill because the bill stays with the property. So for property owners, the fact that we can resume shutoffs does protect their rights so that they don't get stuck with a $2,000 or $3,000 water bill when the tenant moves out because the tenant knew they were protected from being shut off. We don't have a lot of those situations, but it could arise, and this will prevent that from happening. So I support this, and I think it'll be good. And again, we're going to continue to exercise all reserve, all prudent safety before we ever shut anyone's water off. It's something we do with great concern and the safety in mind, but sometimes it is the very last step and the only thing we can do to get the resident to address this outstanding water bill. And as we know, we have Meridian Cares, and if someone does approach us and says, I just can't pay, we make that referral to Meridian Cares. Now, Meridian Cares can't pay it directly, but they can refer the person to another agency that can help them with their utility bills if they have a genuine need due to loss of employment or other support. We do connect them with those support systems.
Okay, further discussion before we vote? I'll ask Mr. Perry, is there any problem, anything else you need to research before we've jumped into this, maybe one meeting earlier than you expected? Anything else you need to bring to our attention?
No, I appreciate the board taking action on it tonight. I know Miriam and the utility billing team will appreciate having an end date set.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. It's further sign of our attempts led by our manager and staff to deal with this COVID pandemic in a fair and person-friendly way as possible. Do we need a vote?
All right, Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Jackson,
Yes.
Trustee Opsimer,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes, Supervisor Stajka.
I vote yes.
All right, motion carries 6-0.
Our last discussion item is the 4th of July fireworks. I don't know if we actually need a motion on this as much as we need to kind of reach some sort of consensus. The manager came forward and mentioned to me that he thought that we ought to put off the fireworks again for this year. And I said, well, maybe we should have the board weigh in. Of course, that was just before we hit the news as being the #1 state in terms of growth of the pandemic effects here in the country. So I throw it open. Do we want to go with July 4th fireworks this year or put it off again? Or some other plan? Ms. Wazinski.
My instinct is to support postponing. You know, we've quadrupled our numbers here in Michigan just in the last month, last 4 weeks. And of those numbers, we're seeing the most positive cases as well as hospitalized cases in the younger population, which, not to say I don't like fireworks anymore, but I know when my kids were little, I always, you know, attended fireworks. And so as frustrating and unfortunate as it is, I just don't feel that it's prudent and or responsible to encourage congregation at this point.
Manager Ross, you want to share your wisdom on this? You originally, your thought originally was that we should postpone this.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have more wisdom than the 6 people on the screen. But I would tell you that it's been a hodgepodge over the last 5 years. You know, you think of July 4th fireworks, and we've had 1 year with the dry conditions and it got moved to New Year's. And then the last couple of years, the board has moved the fireworks to coincide with a big Celebrate Meridian event. So this year, if you move forward, there's a couple things. It's on a Sunday, and also we would need to budget the $20,000. That's not. We'd have to appropriate the $20,000. It's not in the budget. I just, I personally just, I guess Trustee Wazinski said it best. Why would we be trying to encourage people to congregate right now? So I don't really have any other wisdom than that, other than I don't think it's very wise.
Anyone have a contrary point of view? Ms. Jackson?
Yes. I personally will need a celebration once we get to a position where we can again congregate with caution. We already have a, you know, our president is trying to project to some positive results all across the nation by July the 4th. We already have in place the backstop that if the weather conditions are not conducive, that we would not have the fireworks display. And so I think the question is coming to us at this point because of the need to budget for it ahead of time. And so I would prefer an aspirational view of this issue and deal with it as something to look forward to if in fact we're in a position and to work towards if in fact we are in a position on July 4th to actually carry it off.
Okay, in addition to the funds though, there's also work that goes into it. Mr. Welsh, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thank you. You're correct, Mr. Steichen. It's really not an issue. I just brought up the budget issue. I just wanted you to be aware that it's not budgeted. That's not an issue for me to recommend whether we have it or not. I just wanted you to be aware it's not budgeted. Moreover, it's 85 days away. And there are only so many people that provide this type of show. And so if the board, the majority of the board wishes to have a July 4th celebration, we should know sooner than later so we can actually line up the fireworks. I don't know what they're called. The people who put on the fireworks, the operator, I guess is what they're called. I'm sure Chief Hamill has a better word than that. But anyway, that's really the issue tonight. Do you want to have it? If you do, we need to move forward with it soon. We can find the funds. That's not really the issue. Thank you.
Mr. Opsmer, you had your hand up.
Yes, I'm going to concur with Trustee Wazinski and Manager Walsh, because when we look at the rising level of cases, we're already hitting 8,000, 9,000 cases a day on certain days, and we're really back where we were in November. And we still haven't seen what's going to come in about a week when we get the positive tests that result from spring break. So I think the only prudent thing to do is to delay. And I do notice that other communities are going forward with events. For instance, like Traverse City is looking at doing their Cherry Festival, but I don't believe we're going to be in a position to be doing that in July, and I don't think it's the right thing to do, even if other communities are pursuing it. Thank you.
Treasurer.
I truly do also support the safe route here, and I think that we need to put off the July 4th fireworks. I do appreciate Trustee Jackson's aspirational goal of doing something to celebrate sometime this summer. And so I would hope that we get through this recent surge and we hopefully get to herd immunity sometime this summer or something close to it. And perhaps we have a Labor Day fireworks event. We've done it the 4th of July, we've done it New Year's Eve. So let's hope for maybe Labor Day this year. Some community event to celebrate the really tough year, what will then be almost 2 years that this community and every community in the world essentially has suffered through because of this pandemic. So if we can find a way to celebrate and find a way to do fireworks sometime in 2021, we should do it. I don't think July 4th is enough time. I think it's dangerous, but I share your aspirations, Trustee Jackson.
I love the positive aspirations too, but I'm leaning strongly against doing it July 4th. In spite of, in spite of the fact that we've been a long time not having anything good happening in terms of the community, in terms of a big celebration. And I also had the thought that, and it's something we could plan for later, because there's less demand, maybe an end of the summer celebration with Labor Day or something, if things actually do go along and we do start having some herd immunity and better times. Who have we heard from? Ms. Guthrie, you have a comment?
I thought that Trustee Wazinski spoke very eloquently with basically what I would say, but probably not so eloquently. So I concur with her thoughts. I love celebrating. Everybody knows that. It's one thing to make an individual decision. It's another thing to ask an entire group of people to congregate. And so I'm really not interested in doing that at this time.
You had your hand up again, yes.
Yeah, just a thought to add to the aspirations. Maybe, we could think about something that like the school board has adopted and or the governor's adopted, where if we get to a certain point of numbers in Meridian Township and vaccination rates, that would give us something to celebrate anyways. If we can actually get to a vaccination rate of 70% or more, that might put us in a position to where we are safe, we're being responsible in other actions. And I know that would need to be monitored but that might be an option so that we do keep everybody safe and have a plan for Manager Walsh going forward.
All right, well, I think you have a consensus that we're not going to do it for July 4th, Frank, and maybe at some point we're going to ask you to look at the possibility of doing it later in the year, whether it's end of summer or some other time. I think that'll take care of that one. All righty, then we're on to comments from the public. Is Mr. Geevy's with us, and does he have any citizens who might be interested? And if you are out there and are interested, you can call the phone number, or if you're already on here, you can raise your hand, etc., and we'll call on you. 3 minutes.
The phone number for everyone's purpose at home, 517-349-1232. And we have a raised hand by Mr. John Baishney in the public comment area.
Mr. Faishney? You're muted if you're wanting to comment.
Yeah, okay.
There you go.
Okay. I'd like to thank you for letting me make another comment. Firstly, I think your decision about the July 4th is a good one. You know, I think we're all so sad, but you know, gee, we have to protect all of us. And when I found out about the May 6th business for the Kansas Street, I wondered, does it mean that the Planning Commission's decision is not going to go forward? And if there's new information, will the residents of the area or the neighborhood be given that information?
We don't dialogue in public comment, but someone may end up answering your question when we have our final comments from board. Anything else, Mr. Faishney?
If you could state I know you did before, but your name and address for the record.
Okay, John Faithney, and it's 3566 Kansas, Okemos.
Anything else then, Mr. Faishney?
I'm sorry?
Anything else? Any other comments?
I watched your whole meeting and I was very impressed. Thank you.
Thank you. That's nice to hear from citizens. Thank you. Any other members out there that want to comment?
Seeing no other hands, and I'm hearing no telephone, sir.
Okay, we'll now go to other matters from the board and final board member comments. Perhaps somebody would have some answer for Mr. Faishney concerning what's next with regard to the project coming up on May 6th on our agenda. Mr. Kieselbach, it'll be in a full, where it is now at this point. Is that correct?
Yeah. As was mentioned, the applicant asked to have it postponed to the May 6th meeting. They were going to do some additional research, and there may be new information, but that will all be included in your packet. They'll have to have it in prior to that going out. One thing for the public, this first time it's presented to the Township Board is only as a discussion item, and we will include all the communications that the Planning Commission received, the staff reports, and the minutes from the Planning Commission as part of our packet that comes up to the Township Board.
And the steps will be the same as it is now, where the Planning Commission took this action. That'll be the information that we have. Right. Okay. Yes. I think that's what he was concerned about. All right. Anyone else? Manager, is that your hand up there?
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether you were just referring to the board or not, so I wanted to pick up.
I was, but since nobody raised their hand, you're as good as a board member. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. You know, as you can see, a lot of the issues that you deal with as a board involve one department, and that's the Community Development and Planning Department. And as I sat here and think about, you know, what's before you, Kansas Road and the Silverleaf development and the Copper Creek, and I could go on and on, but I won't. If there's a couple board, it's an important decision, and I want the board to be comfortable with where we're going with this decision. There's not a lot of qualified, talented candidates that we would want or that are out there to represent Meridian Township going forward in this very key position. I mean, it's been 496 months, right? So if there's a couple of board members who have the time and the interest and want to serve on the panel of consideration next week sometime, just shoot me an email, let me know. And if there's a couple of you that want to participate, I would welcome that, because I think it's important for the board to draw that relationship in right away between the board and this department. So thank you very much.
Yeah, let's do that separately. If there's an overwhelming degree of individuals, then between the manager and I will figure out which two get the glory. Okay. All right. Anything else from the board members? Yes, Ms. Wozinski.
Oh, I just want to publicly thank Director Kieselbach, and this probably happened at the last meeting, but for all your service. And I can't tell you how much I learned from you and Mr. Menzer, just about zoning, about planning, all in a very short time, crash course, but I had two of the best teachers. So I wish you the best of luck. You will be missed. It will be hard to replace, but just wanted to thank you.
Well, fortunately, that chain is still connected to his ankle and to his chair until next month. So, Ms. Jackson.
I think I haven't taken the opportunity yet to express my sentiments to Mr. Kieselbach, particularly about his pending retirement. I know at one point I assumed that when you hit 40 years at Meridian Township that you were planning to retire, and was pleasantly surprised that you were not planning to retire at that time. I have almost everything I know about Meridian Township and about serving Meridian Township on a volunteer basis, I learned through you, either directly or indirectly. I will certainly miss your presence and your wisdom and your even temperament. And I hope you enjoy your retirement to the max. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other board member comments? We can do Kieselbach comments 2 or 3 more times. All righty. Then we need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Absamer, supported by DeShane. Any objection? Then we're adjourned. Y'all come back now, you hear? Next week.